Hi, welcome back to Let's Do More Show. Chris Ruflin here. I just wanted to do a quick intro on today's guest. Such an important show. I hope that everybody who listens in can listen to the end. I will tell you that the best info in these podcasts is definitely at the end of the show. So either fast forward to that or listen for the full hour if it's possible. But I had a friend on, Tiffany, who is part of the real life mentoring. It's her company. She's the community impact director over at USARA and a family peer support specialist. And we had a great conversation from everything from spirituality to near-death experiences to thoughts, the right type of thinking, how to get through hard moments. I mean, it was a show that was really great and a combination of all of the above. I promise you're not going to want to miss it. And if you would please leave us some comments, let us know if you need any help in any way or if you're struggling with anything. We reply to all those comments. But I hope that you truly do enjoy today's shows. I know I did. It's episode number 11, and I'm excited to finally pass that 10 mark and to continue going on. Thank you for your support, and everybody listening in. Enjoy the show. Hi, and welcome back to Let's Do More Show. I'm your host, Chris Ruflin, and the creator of the show. I say co-creator because, as everyone knows, I created the show with the help of my higher power, God, and believe that I'm doing the right thing here by helping people. I'm really excited this week to have, again, another old-time friend. I start every podcast with another old-time friend. I've been really blessed in my life to have a lot of amazing people come into my life. And Tiffany is one of those. I've got Tiffany Nacarado on the phone or on the line here, the video. And, she has got a lot of different things going on. And I'm really excited because we've known each other for about 8 or so years, roughly, ever since we both got in recovery. And Tiffany's really dedicated her life to helping people out with a lot of different things. For example, she has her own business, real life mentoring, where she does workshops, personal coaching. She is currently the community impact director for USARA, which is a foundation here in Utah that helps with resources for substance use disorder. She's also a family peer support specialist, very spiritual woman and very grounded. And I'm excited to see where our conversation goes. If you're listening for the first time, you're going to want to tune in for the full show. I will tell you right now that the best stuff comes at the end. So either listen to the entire thing or fast forward to the end and catch that. But I know that we're going to have a great conversation. I've been looking forward to this recording for a while. So welcome on, Tiffany. It's good to see your face there.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Old times, right?
I know, right? The cool thing about the community in general that we're both a part of is that you can go like months, sometimes years without seeing people. I had a guest on a few weeks ago that I hadn't seen since Gel 7 years ago, and it's like you have that instant connection again, right? And it's cool. It's definitely a blessing that we both have.
You
So
know,
what I want to, yeah, go
what
ahead.
I remember you like the first time was
Yeah.
us at FTR
Oh
dance.
yeah, probably.
Remember it was like, and we had like these glow sticks, and your wife was
Yeah.
glow sticks
Yeah.
all over and got in my eye, and then your wife had to help my
That's,
eyeball. It was
that's right. I forgot about that. You had to get the special eye drops. Yeah.
I was like, my eye freaked out.
Oh man,
You
that's
guys
so
did
funny.
funny. And that I just wanted to share that because that is my first that's my first memory of you,
Very
Chris,
cool.
and it touched me, and it really gravitated like towards who you are and who Christy,
Yeah.
was at that moment. And so I just thank you. So I'm glad to be here. Full
Yeah.
circle, here we are. My eyes are
I
fine.
know, and I forgot about that. That's an awesome story, and I appreciate you recognizing that. I always talk about it's far easier just to be kind and nice than it is to have a resentment or live in fear or lack in some of those things. And so I do my best with it. I'm not perfect. I'm still human, but it's cool to hear that you remember that for sure. So reason I'm excited about today's conversation, folks, is that me and Tiffany, we have just a ton in common. Not only are we both in recovery, she's a lot more active in that community as far as her whole life is built around it, in helping other people, which, as you guys know, I'm passionate about, but also on the aspect of law of attraction, positive thinking, personal development, right? This is going to be a podcast that has all that stuff included. And that's why I said you'll want to tune in for the whole thing. I probably want you to tune in for the whole thing of any of the shows, though, honestly. But so Tiffany, let's go back towards the beginning. I like to build a foundation for people, and I want to go way back with you, like I do with a lot of guests, and just talk about like what was growing up like. And I like to get into maybe the first part of the addiction and what that looked like, and fast forward from there to what happened that caused the stop, right? And then what life looks like now. And we'll get into some cool advice for these folks on mindset and law of attraction, all of that. But yeah, tell me, what was it like growing up? I mean, did you grow up here? Where were you? And How was family life and all that?
I grew up in Salt Lake City, and I came from a divorced home and with young parents at the time. I was their only child, and they separated, and I was just full of love because I was the child on both sides of my family that came from a broken home, the only broken home. And so aunts and uncles, grandma and grandpas, they just loved on me so much and thought I was the most perfect human, which I was. No, I'm just kidding. But um, with all that love, though, became a lot of pressure, right? Pressure
Right.
to be something and to keep it up. And that has followed me into my adult life. And even today, so I have to catch myself. Like, am I doing this because I want people to love me? Am I,
Right.
Um, and
Right.
so it was unstable. I'll say my childhood was very, unstable. Go to this home, go to that home. And again, it was full of this love, but it was
Yeah.
uncertainty. And I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I was like, I have to do this.
Get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it caused me to be not true to myself and being able to be like a what's it called? Not an iguana. Oh my gosh, I have a brain cramp.
A chameleon. I get you. I got you there on that word because I've been called that many times.
Right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I changed schools all the time, and I had friends. I'll say though that's one of my biggest strengths because I can go everywhere and make a friend, right? And that stems from my childhood too, because I was living with my single mom, and we'd moved to this
Right.
apartment, this house, and constantly changing. And I learned how to be adaptable. So growing up was a little bit of chaotic,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of good examples. The one example that I had to look for in my adult life that I didn't have as a child was a healthy relationship between a man and woman. I didn't have that for
Right.
many years. And so that's been fun to learn in adulthood.
Yeah. Learn how to navigate that when it's a lot harder to break all those bad habits or those things that we don't even know we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that. And so, I mean, for the most part, so you're telling me you didn't have a normal upbringing.
No.
And for those of you that have heard me before, I joke about that because there's no such thing as a normal upbringing. We all have, some sort of trauma we get from growing up,
Absolutely.
and
Mhm.
that people deal with it different ways and bring it in different ways. And the cool thing about the recovery process is we get a chance to really dig deep on that stuff and recognize it and make changes, right? If we want to.
Mhm.
So fast forward to the addiction part. Like, when did this start happening? When did you? And I don't know really what your people say drug of choice. I say drug of no choice was,
Yeah.
because at the end we really didn't have a choice on what we were doing there. But yeah, share with us kind of where things went from there.
Yeah. I say drug of use because it just depends on
Yeah,
stage of life I was, where I was, what was around, right? Drug of use, like what was
it's a lot
probably.
better than a drug of choice because it's not a choice.
Yeah. I like dibbled into different things. I wasn't heavy into anything up until 24 years old. So I had big goals, and I had all of these things I was working towards. And so I
Right,
didn't really indulge into alcohol or drugs like some of my peers were doing. And then fast forward to 24, I was deeply in love. And when I share my story, I say that heartbreak took me out, love took me out, and love also brought me in because love
right,
is what, makes this world go around. And that's my core value is what I work towards or work
yeah,
with love. And so 24, here I am with the love of my life, that I thought, and
right,
had a kid, and we were both young, and things didn't turn out the way that I had imagined in my life. I thought, oh, I grow up and I do everything perfect. I'm going to do things differently than my parents, right?
right. Yeah, we all say that. Yep.
Uh-huh. And because again, going back, my parents didn't teach me how to have that healthy relationships. I thought, okay, I'm in this relationship, we're healthy, and it seemed healthy. It was healthy, like we were really
Sure.
doing well. And then there was he ended up having, an affair, and things went south there, and I turned quick. My brain instantly said, go use drugs. You cannot handle this pain. Go use drugs. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
I remember calling my mom. Hey, mom, come get my kid. I need to go use drugs. She's like, use drugs? What are you talking about? And I'm like, and she could not stop me. And I did. I went
Yeah.
news at like 3 in the morning when my mind told me that, like, and I hadn't had that
Mhm.
history, but I have had it around, like peers doing it. So I called one of my peers, and did that. And quickly things started turning for the worst. Got my ex-husband addicted at the time, so now we're both unhealthy, unhappy, and addicted.
Right.
And then I got pregnant. I ended up sobering up, and we separated, and then we got back together, and we had not worked on any of those issues. We tried really hard. We had the white picket fence. We had another baby. I am going into the school teaching reading. I was soccer mom, or soccer coach even,
Wow.
and doing all of these things and being like a faithful member, of a church, and looked really pretty from the outside.
Right.
Then again, though, it stems back from my childhood not having that healthy relationship that I really just dreamt about being a mom and being a wife. That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
Healthy family. And
It's
even though,
interesting how we do real quick, how we do, like, number one, we say that thing where, hey, I'm not going to do what my parents did, right? And I think for people listening too, there's going to be people that are in recovery listening. Maybe this will run across some parents. I can't stress the importance of how, and even in my situation with a blended family, a trauma-based blended family is what I call us. It's so important to try to set the right example with relationships. And it's not something easy to do, or even something that we can, do perfectly at all. But it is such a big deal, because so many of us get into our adult lives like that, right? And then we can't navigate that because we didn't have the example. And most of us kids learn by example. So
well, and then even knowing that my biggest thing is talking to my kids or other kids, that I coach, is that life is not perfect, because we think, oh, we can do the opposite of my parents and
absolutely.
have it this way, or we need to live up to what my parents are doing if they are the example, and then it doesn't go that way. And
Right.
so I say it all the time, we're having a human experience, and it goes like this all the time. Hold on, you know
Roller coaster. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so if I had the same mindset then than I do now, things would have been a lot differently. Because I was like, oh, my life's not perfect. What do you mean? Like, we have to live up with the
Yeah.
Joneses, and da 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 da. As my ex-husband sleeping on the couch, husband at the time sleeping on the couch, and I'm in the room with babies,
Yeah.
but I don't dare to tell anyone that it's like that, and
Right.
all.
You're still keeping up the mask and the facade there that everything was fine,
Mhm.
which is, I think, what we do when we're trying to not do what our parents did. It's even more, that's more apparent for us. And I relate a lot to what you're saying too. My parents waited to divorce until I was really out of the house. Most kids were, but we knew that things weren't good, and we definitely didn't have a good example. And it's interesting when we talk about mindset and law of attraction, it's almost we attract those things in our adult relationship by trying to avoid them. Just like if I try to avoid gaining weight, I'm probably going to gain weight. It's all what we put out there and what we focus on. So now you're deep in your addiction. You and your husband are addicted. You got the kids. You're trying to raise them. No one really knows what's going on. When
Actually, we
was
weren't addicted at this time. So we were
okay?
I
So
only
you're
got
both sober. Okay,
here, and then we got sober, and we had our babies in our white picket fence. But I'm just saying the life was not
got it. Okay,
okay.
got it. Perfect.
So he's going to work. And I'm at home. He's going to work, and it's just this big cycle. Well, then I'm like, oh no, it's not perfect. So I started now getting addicted to, this is why I say drug abuse too, a different drug, right? I had
Mhm.
a C-section, the opiates come, I get introduced to opiates, never liked opiates before, but my life was just in shambles, and my emotional maturity was not there. Either I didn't
Right.
have any tools, and I didn't dare to ask anyone for tools. So I started getting addicted. So I am addicted. Husband is not. Kids are there, right? And I was living this double life. Susie homemaker during the day, then go out at night, be home before my husband had to go to work, do it again, right? And he would drive up, I would drive up in my car, and he'd be just sitting in his truck waiting, like so mad at me because I'm pushing the limits. Well, the limits started getting pushed in more and more, and
Mm.
I ended up leaving my whole family, to go live on the streets of Salt Lake City
Wow.
unsheltered. I just left. I was like, I can't do this. This is so much, and during those 6 years, life really beat my, tushy,
Mm.
because
Yeah. And what is it like going from, even not the perfect life in a way, but like you had this structure and all that, going from that to, homelessness? I mean, how? And this also, just real quick, it explains the power of addiction and substance use disorder too, right? A lot of family members listen to these that might be having someone who they love struggling with addiction, and it's not their fault. And this disease has such a pull that somebody like yourself, who really wanted that perfect life, was trying to create it. You're also fine with just completely leaving that and being homeless because now something else had taken over, right?
It seemed
What
easy.
were the emotions you were feeling during that time?
I can almost feel them right now. I have tingles all over my body. It was very defeated, so sad, sadness, next sadness. Hearing my kids cry and promising that I'd be back. Never went back.
Right.
They're in my life now, but
Yeah, you have great relationships with your kids now. I see that all the time.
yeah, we just got back from a cruise, so it's awesome. Yeah, we're good now.
Yeah.
But and scary. Ooh, that's another one. I was so frightened because I wasn't used to this life. I didn't grow up on the streets. My parents didn't have, what I mean? It was just like, and I get on the streets and then, wow, people are doing things that I didn't even think existed or I only heard in movies
Right.
or horror stories or on the news, and now I'm like seeing or hearing stuff, and then I'm getting abused. And I won't go all into that, but abuse after abuse after abuse to me. I was a pretty girl that seemed innocent, and then I had to start turning to a hard shell. I was like, oh, okay, right. And then I started acting like someone I totally wasn't. My moral compass went out the door, and then I started showing up and doing a lot of things that not proud of. And
Sure.
it's just a quick turn, but I was like survival, and didn't know what else to do. It was very lonely too. I'll say that. Very,
Yeah.
very lonely on those streets.
Yeah, and I think everybody can take something from that too. When you see people that are unsheltered, I love how you put that. We got to remember that those are people too. Some of those people, do struggle with mental illnesses and addiction and things like that they aren't in full control. And it's not like they're just wanting to go beg on the street. You become a product of that environment, just like any environment. Long time ago, a mentor of mine told me that you are who you surround yourself with.
Yep.
And I've experienced that several times in my life with different genres of people, if you want to say that, and so I can relate a lot to what you said, and it is a sad place to be. So the turning point, when was the moment that you realized that some kind of change was necessary?
Well, I mean, I would say it was years into, but it started, after I kept trying to die, Chris. I kept trying to die, and like I am a several survivor of overdoses and drug poisoning, and so some of them were intentional, some weren't, and then someone would save me, and thank God, I thank everyone that had their hands in saving me, including people who were homeless. See, they save lives too.
Absolutely.
We're not
Absolutely.
bad, right? They're my people. I love them.
Yeah.
And then also paramedics and doctors and whatever. But yeah, like trying to die and I wouldn't die. Like I just wouldn't die. And I started, isn't that
It's so frustrating when you're in that space. I mean, I know it
it
sounds
is
funny
like
to anyone
laughing, it's
listening.
not funny,
No, it's not funny, but that's really what it is when you're in that space. It's like I mean, when I went into these series of relapses I had after having some time sober, almost every single time I tried to die after or during, because of the shame and the guilt, really. And I experienced the same thing you did, which was opening my eyes every time, coming back, having near-death experiences. And we'll get into that a little bit. I know you had some of those. And in the end, that ultimately solidified my spirituality and what I believe in. But yeah, it's crazy to be in that space where that's your best option, right?
I know, and it's so sad. But yeah,
It is.
and I'm glad that you touched on the shame, or the shame, because that's what wanted me to. I was like, how am I doing this again? I'm living in opposite what I believe. I'm doing things,
Right.
and then not showing up for the kids. That was, and that
Yeah.
is like the
Yeah,
worst.
because all your values go out the window, right? I mean, I so relate to you with that just because for me, it's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation. I'm not the same person at all. There isn't one value of mine that's important to me that I'm going to think about outside of the fact of guilt and shame. And so when we're doing something that's like super conflicting to the way we believe and what we really feel, we're going to have that shame, and it's overbearing. It's one of the worst things you can experience. So was there a specific turning point that you remember though when you kind of said, okay, enough's enough, I'm going to take my first step, or what happened? How did you?
It was the spiritual experience. So I started, like, something clicked saying, it was a voice, not click. It was a voice that said, hey, ask for help again. Like, it was like, what? How, and I've had that in my head, but it was a voice that
Yeah.
came in. And I can't recognize if it was my mom who had passed while I was out using, or if it was, God or whatever it was, but it was a voice that was not my voice that said, ask for help. And then it walked me through, I'm not kidding you, walked me through on my next steps. It was not me. It said, write a letter to your family. I still have that letter. Write a letter to your family asking for help one more time. And so I got my pen and paper, started writing this letter, and I wrote the letter, and then I ripped it up, and then I wrote a letter. I don't know how many times, but I just know it took a couple times. But I was sitting in Murray, in front of these apartments that were well-known drug trafficking apartments,
Right.
and there's this door, and I actually went and visited the door and said thank you because it was a big spiritual experience, sitting at that door writing the letter, and
Wow.
and then I know, like, it's just
It's
amazing.
crazy.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
I
every one of our lives is it could be a movie. It's crazy moments like that you if that doesn't cause you to believe in something higher than yourself and that there's something else out there that's guiding and protecting us, then I don't know what would.
right?
And I know some people would argue with that. Some people say, "Oh, you were on drugs and you were just hallucinating things and you just heard a voice." For me, I just choose to believe differently, and that choice of thinking the other way around, that it's divine guidance and things like that, has served me a lot better in my life than when I was an atheist for 15 years and angry at the entire world. You
Wow.
know, and
Yes. Mm-hmm.
yeah, prior to recovery, I was, and I was the kind of atheist that would talk you out of your spirituality. It wasn't good enough that I didn't have any. I needed to sit down with you and pull out YouTube for a minute. and,
Yeah.
yeah, man, and being a sales
I
guy is
love that.
very, very
You
convincing,
are so
unfortunately.
spiritual now. So
Oh
that
yeah,
I
yeah. You wouldn't recognize the person from before, so this is crazy. But you do this letter, so you get it to your family.
Yeah, they get the letter.
What?
They offer
Yeah,
back. They're like, okay, I have two dads, and my dad Steve called me and said, okay, got your letter. Talk to his family. I'll come and have a conversation with you. So here I am. I'm like, okay, cool. I can have a conversation. Still manipulated mind, right? I'm like,
yeah. Of course, yeah.
again, it was not me that put the pen to the paper and got him the letter. So he comes and gets me, and I get in the car. Well, after I just like stuffed I'm homeless, right? I'm unsheltered.
Right.
Put all of my stuff in a bush, including the drugs I just got. And we're like,
Oh man.
I'll come back and get you, how it is.
Yeah.
And then he goes, well, if you're serious, we're doing it now. And I just remember going, and I wanted to say, let me out of the car, and I couldn't breathe. And I wanted to scream. But instead, like, this voice, again, not my voice, came out and said, okay. And
Hmm.
from there on, it was okay or yes. I remember so many times I said yes when I wanted to tell my family no, or I'm not doing this. I wanted to, act out because
Yeah.
I detoxed on their couch or in their bed. Like, I detoxed hardcore with nothing, I was seizing, and my legs were shaking and throwing up and all of this stuff nonstop, and for 2 weeks, because I also was coming off fentanyl. And so it was bad. And during that time, I had a lot of spiritual experiences too. But every time, like, I literally wanted to I want to say, no, I'm not doing this, or I can't do this. And I went to speak that, and different words would come out of my mouth. So
Yeah, it's
it was
crazy.
amazing.
Yeah, no, I've had that experience. I get it. Um, the last experience, well, I've had others since then, but I remember that was what it was like for me when I relapsed for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
After 5 years of recovery, the doctor, and this was the other voice, asked if I need something for my ADHD. Everyone beside me was screaming, say no, say no, say no, run out of there, call your sponsor, whatever else. And the words that came out was yes. But I've
Mm-hmm.
had far more times when it was the other way around like that. And, these little moments of clarity is what we call those in recovery, right? I feel blessed. People like you and I do get a chance to have these big spiritual experiences that are life shifting. I've had enough of those too, and I wish that certain ones were enough to stop the pain I was going through. But it took a lot of work, and it always does. What's been the hardest part? So, well, let me go back here for a second. So you do this letter. He comes and picks you up. He says, "Hey, we're doing this now." You detox at home. How did you know where to go for your next step on like what to do and how to get into the community? And was there somebody who kind of bridged that gap for you?
Yeah, it was USARA. That's how I got linked in with USARA. But I knew, like, so after I had a couple months under my belt, staying close to my family kept really good dibs. They were like, nope, we're going to Bear Lake. You're coming to Bear Lake. You're going here. You're going. You know what I mean? I just tagged along.
Right. Just keep you busy and away from everything. Yeah.
Or sat on their couch. I remember for hours, and I learned so much about baseball and all of these things. I just sat and said yes, and whatever they wanted me to do, I did for a couple months. And then I was like, okay, I have all these criminal charges now that I can send me to prison, right? And I don't want to go to prison. I'm scared. And so I started cleaning up my mess and calling the court cases and seeing where all my warrants were. 'Cause I have so many warrants. And simply just started to working step by step. But I go into the courts and they let me be into drug court, which I'm a huge advocate. It's called now recovery courts.
Okay. Very
And
cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Huh? I'm all
Yeah.
about language, changing
Yeah.
language.
Of course. Yeah. It's very important in changing the stigma around this disease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and then I seen a little flyer that said "Ugly Sweater Contest. Go to USARA." Or whatever. And I was like, what is USARA? I had no clue. And I walked into USARA, and I actually went. This is funny, and I tell the judges this now that I work with. I said went to USARA to get away from your rule about no association, because it said you can't hang out with other drug.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. I know.
And I've advocated towards different policies for that now, because I use that story. I'm like, we're still going to do it. I went to USARA with 2 different people in drug court.
Yeah.
Just to, but we went there and we ended up loving it. And a coach handed me her card, Blue Set. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
her.
I miss that. Yes, I know. I knew her. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. She handed
Wonderful
me,
one.
yes, and she helped change my life. She helped me vision my life in the presence, because that's what us coaches do. But she said, call me. I was like, okay, why am I going to call her again? I don't know why I called her, but I did. And I sat down
Yeah.
with her, and things started changing, and that was the spark of my career too. So
Yeah. I think it's cool. There's always, in most stories anyways, there seems to be, a positive instigator in it somewhere. We get led to the right places, and I feel like the right people get introduced to us. And I do remember Blue Set. She actually helped me put on a lot of events that I used to do with young people in recovery, and the barbecues and all that, and always showing up and always checking in on me. Yeah, I miss her a lot, So far, I mean, now we've got this life I wanted to get into as far as like what it looks like now and some of the advice you might have for people that are going to hear this. What do you think the hardest part of recovery has been for you so far?
the hardest part has been trying to juggle, because when you get into recovery, especially, at the beginning, you have so many things that people are asking you to do or live up
Sure.
to, or your own. Oh, I'm 35 and I don't have this yet, so I need to do this, or
Yeah.
gosh dang it, I just want to be normal in this or whatever. So you have all of these things, and people and places asking you for things. And it's like, how do you juggle this? This is so hard. Or, then you start working on something, and then another area is maybe falling and you feel guilty about that. So learning how to balance and juggle has been the hardest. And then also, I talk about this a lot, is the stigma as being a mom. That
Definitely hard. Oh yeah.
talk about this a lot, coming in to recovery, and it was my own stigma and shame, and then also what other people put on me. Where have you been for 6 years? What, you left your kids and now what do you know what I mean? It was constantly trying to talk my way of earning that seat at the table, which became exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that I'm one of the same in that, as far as the work I've done for advocating for stigma change. It's hard. And I don't know if it'll ever change in our lifetime completely, but I'm committed, and part of the show is committed to helping people understand the inner workings of us that suffer with this, and those of us in recovery and those of us not in recovery, and what does it look like, and what does our side look like, so that the world at large can understand a little bit better. Even though it's something you and I live, recovery has to be first in our life. I'm amazed at how many comments I get on these videos and the social media that this work is really important and needs to be done, right? That it's an issue that's not covered enough is what I hear a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, fast forward today into your sober life. What are some of the daily things that you do, or practices you do daily, that have been helpful in kind of keeping you on track with your recovery?
Yeah. Well, can I go back for a moment to finish
Yeah.
that question that you
Yeah.
asked prior, like the difficult time, because I
Mhm.
know, like you just said, so many people get on here and say we need to talk about it and all that. So I have like that highlighted, and how do we work through that? Because there's so many times that people do give up or want to give up because of the shame that is attached to
Yeah,
this, you know,
absolutely.
or
Yeah.
the trying to juggle and not knowing what to do. And I would say, try your best. Just with the juggling, try your best, pick on something, and everything will work out. Like, you don't need to do everything, right? Even though we want to
Right.
do everything, we want to catch up to people our age and what society tells us we should do. And it's like, it does not need to be perfect. Again, going back to the perfectness and human experiences, pick something that brings value and joy. When I start coaching people in early recovery, I say, let's make your heart sing. How can we make your heart sing today? Even if it is going to do the dishes or going to work or whatever, how can we get
Right.
that
Right.
to a place of enjoyment? And so picking a couple things and not feeling you have to do everything. And then working through the shame of what we put on ourselves and what others put on ourselves is hold on. Please hold on and do not give up, because what
Yeah.
you're doing is enough. It's so hard to show up as a parent, and I can speak from the mom side, showing up as a mom, feeling like you are nothing, and you do not earn to be, you do not deserve to be there because you've let down your kids, society, family, exes, whatever.
Right.
And don't give up. Hold on. I've talked to so many new mommies, like, or moms that have reunified with their kids or whatever. I'm like, just hold on. When you want, it's okay to cry in that pillow, cry to a friend or whatever. Don't give up, because it will work it through. It won't always be that feeling. Because I don't have shame today. I can sit here, and I've done a lot of messed up stuff to my kids, and I'm not proud of it. And I sit here as a proud mom that I've held on, and I'm able to help other people through that. And my kids see me as this resilient person, you
Yeah.
know, it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, a couple things I love that you said there. This concept of hold on. That's a new one. I haven't heard anybody really express it that way. And I think there's be patient and don't leave before the miracle happens and all these little catchphrases we say in recovery. But I mean, hold on is probably one of the best ones you could ever use, because that's what you do have to do. There's some days that the major win you have for that day is that you didn't use or get drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound crazy to anybody who doesn't have this compelling urge to go and use like we do in our heads, or to feel different. But that's really what it's like. And there's this concept of hold on is really pertinent to that, because it's like you can always at least do that for a certain period of time. I remember in my early recovery, and again coming back to recovery, there's been a lot of hours where I was just holding on for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of minutes where I just held on for a minute. And that kind of segues into this perfect part of the conversation I want to get into with you, which is spirituality. Has spirituality played a role in your recovery? I know support groups, I know therapy and things like that you've spoke about, which I think people are familiar with the go-tos there. But what role, if any, has spirituality, had in your recovery so far?
Well, spirituality is my number one thing. Yeah. I use spirituality for my pathway in recovery. As you know, Chris, most of us recover differently. There's groups of people that recover one way,
Yeah.
but if you dissect it, we all have this own special
Right.
recovery plan, and we should. That's another
Mm-hmm.
thing I'm a big advocate for. I
Yep.
will do recovery, what recovery looks like to me. You can do what recovery looks like to you, right?
Right.
Spirituality is my number one thing, and it has helped me adjust and navigate different stages of my recovery or of my life, different years, since I'm going into 8 years. And how that looks is simply that I trust and have faith. But I have these conversations. I have these conversations with God on a daily basis, on a regular, consistent basis. I'm very disciplined with God, and you can write letters to God, and then have God write letters back to me. It's so beautiful, and having a normal conversation and not just a prayer, because prayer is important too. And I pray. First thing in the morning, first thing, before I go to bed, pray over meal or whatever. I'm thanking God all day long, and
Yeah.
having these genuine conversations, like, why did you do that, God? Or God, like, did you forget about, like, I don't, it's just okay. God's just like,
Yeah.
he's actually, going back to, remember I said the example that I wanted of how love's supposed to be as a child. God
Yeah.
has been able to show up and give me that, demonstrate what it's supposed to be, how I'm supposed to love another human being, and how I deserve to be loved. And it's because God gives me that. So, like, every time I make a mistake, I'm like, oh, God loves me. Okay, I'm good enough. Yes, and it helps translate that into my regular life with other relationships, including myself. That's a big one. Mhm.
Yeah, and that is a huge one. I agree. Spirituality, and that's the thing I think people maybe don't understand so much about spirituality. It's not about where you go once a week or, how many times a day that you pray. There's many lessons I've learned that tell me that the more that I've set my sights on my spirituality, and God, rely on that for a source of strength. Number one, it's the only thing that doesn't go away from me when I think that way.
Mhm.
And I've also thought the other way where I've tuned God out and I've seen what my life looks like that too. And just for me personally, it works a lot better to be tuned in. And yeah, some days that is me looking up and going, okay, dude, what the, what was that all about? But most days it's like getting signs in front of me, something I read, something that pops in front of me, something another person says. And the days I live in that space, my life is just vastly better with something outside of myself into my life. And it's like that for a lot of us in recovery. Was it moments in, you talked about a spiritual experience that you had with this letter and the voice you heard, but I also know a little bit about your story. There was a lot of times there was overdoses and things like that. I had the same thing, and ended up on life support a couple times. I've severely injured a foot of mine, had to have 3 surgeries for that. All these things as a result of relapse and using, and quite a few of these had like a very, very spiritual, moment in there, including the near-death experience I had. Have you ever had anything like that that you came to from and were able to use to kind of solidify your spirituality?
Yeah, so many, and not enough time tonight to go into all of them, but I'll go into one that that I bring. I don't know, I use it every day that I'm thinking of, how sometimes it's like, oh, like, let's not be so spiritual today, or whatever it is, the
Yeah, yeah,
challenging voice. I'm like,
yeah.
no, remember these times when you were out, doing the mostest, and God showed up for you. So I was unsheltered, sleeping in my car, cold, and dope sick, right? And I actually wasn't my car. Well, it was my car because I got it, but it was my mom's car. My mom had passed away, and that's a whole nother episode. But anyways, passed away, and I got her car, and I'm driving, and I'm homeless, and I'm in her car, or in the car, and I'm freezing, and the car was running, and I am sitting in a not very safe neighborhood, and saw like one of the worst. I'm not going to mention this in case anyone listens. It's fine. Um, so, and I'm sleeping in there, and I had a friend with me too, and he runs into a house to go, locate some drugs because I was so sick,
Right.
and then I wake up. So I wake up, and oh, I'm in the passenger side, by the way, and my feet are up on the dash, and I wake up to my head hitting the window over here, and I'm like, what is happening? And I look over, and it's not my friend that went into the house. Someone had jumped in my car, stole my car. I was laying back, so you couldn't even see me that I was in the car until after, But I look over, and it's this kid I've never met. And we're just driving crazy around, and my head, and then I'm like, blood's coming down because I was hitting the head, like the window's so bad,
Yeah.
that blood is coming down, and I'm like, I remember saying, "Who are you?" But then I passed out again, and the next time I woke up was ding, ding, ding. It was door going off, and I look out, and the driver's door is wide open with that ding waking me up, and I'm toddling like in this, I don't know, I didn't know at the time, it was like a tree off the freeway, so he had drove the car off the freeway, and
Wow.
I'm screaming in pain because my well, I didn't know at the time, but my whole leg, if you've seen my body, I have scars all over, from this and other things that have happened. My leg was shattered to pieces, and my spine was broke. When I got my clothes back from when I got out of the hospital, you couldn't even tell what color they were because they were bright red. All of my clothes bled everywhere.
Wow.
And I'm screaming, and I can't move. And I'm like, and no one's around. And so then I start, I look over, and my phone, and I swear it was his phone. I don't know, really remember, but my phone that was back in the back seat. And I try to grab it. My back's broken. I can't. And I'm just like, what is going on? So I'm passing out, and then I'm up again, and looking back and screaming for help. Well, the next time I woke up was my phone was in my hand, and dispatch was on there saying, Tiffany, Tiffany. And I'm like, how in the heck did I get my phone in my hand? Right. And
I,
it was a spirit. It was not me. It was not me because I did not move. So
yeah.
it was that spirituality that,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I believe in that as well. I was just talking about this with somebody I'm trying to help a little bit too. And just talking about how there is no coincidences, and other people have other beliefs, and that's fine. I'm like you. It's like, hey, you have your belief. That's totally cool. Here's what mine is, and I'm pretty loud about it too. But not to convince somebody, just to share my experience of what life is like. And I've had moments like that too. I'm excited to do a show in a couple weeks here. We're going to talk about this experience a lot more, but I had one of those where, I completely came out of my body, went to the other side, met deceased family members and relatives. It was a really, really crazy experience I had. And for a month and a half after coming back from it, even though I felt my spirit slam into my body again and experienced the pain of this realm again, which is not fun, when you're over on the other side and it's all about peace, love, happiness, and just no weight to anything, weight like heaviness to anything. But when I first went over there, the voice I first heard, as I had realized I had actually succeeded at killing myself, I'd overdosed myself, I'm floating away from my body, looking at it go blue. And the panic set in because I don't think any of us really want to kill ourselves with drugs, or we don't want to kill ourselves when we're suicidal because of our shame or guilt. I think it really is. We just don't feel like we're worth anything enough to reach out to somebody to say, hey, I need some help, or hey, I need a hug, or whatever it is. And but the first thing that came about when I went over there was this just enormous vibrational voice. I would say, I mean, I don't know what to call it because words are not the same. The way I experienced it is words were not the same over there. I knew what somebody was saying and that they were words, but it was not like we have words here. And I heard this giant, rumble of just saying, be still and know that I am God. And immediately, everything calmed down for me, right? Immediately, everything calmed down. I felt the most amazing feeling. In fact, the only thing I can compare that feeling to, Tiffany, is the first time that I used. That's as close as I can get to explaining it in words we have here in the present. And that really, when I came back from that experience, among other things we'll talk about on the show coming up, talk about a way to solidify your recovery. And, my wife for a long time thought I was just in a drug-induced psychosis. I thought so too, until about a month later when I was telling my mother about this. And I told her about a story of one of the relatives over there that I had no idea was a relative. And she's literally said to me, that's like one of your great, 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 great grandparents. And here's her story. And it lined up with what I heard. And I had no idea about this person. And so these little things have came back from it, but it's, I think it's amazing. And I think we're lucky to have those, and we're lucky to be alive for sure. And there's a reason for that.
And so I like that you brought up, the voices and stuff, because it is different. And so I have had many near-death experiences, but same thing. So my mom had passed, right? After my mom passed, every time I would almost die, I would hear her and feel her pushing me down. It was like this weird pressure, right? Leave my body, pushing me down, and her saying, "It's not your time." Like she was pissed at me, like, "Stop." Every time.
So we're back in the pond.
And then the last time that I overdosed, I remember her not pushing me down, and my body kept floating, and she was like, "I can't save you anymore." And that actually, now I'm thinking, and we're talking about this, that was what led me to, okay, then how do I live? Because that scared the shit out of me. You know what I mean? And because it was like, but going back to the car thing, I felt spirits in there. I felt like, and I do believe it was my mom. My mom grabbed my phone. She had looked out for me, and there's more. Even when I was detoxing, I seen her whole spirit. I seen her spirit, and I was not on drugs now, so people can't say it was, what I mean? Came, and she was sitting next to me, and I told her I was gonna do this now, and stop using. And she was like, "Oh, yay! Now I can go." And she went. And
and we have, I can attest from my experience, we have a giant spirit team. Most of us have a team over there that's definitely watching out for us and helping influence energies and stuff here in front of us and doing the best they can. I mean, at some level, we still have our personal choice. One of the things I want to talk about with you also, and then I want to get into, for the last part of the show here, just some mindset stuff. There was this idea of free agency, right? And I grew up in a predominant religion around here where free agency was like the ability to choose right and wrong. And what I learned on the other side is that free agency was actually the ability to choose our emotional state, right? And I was taught, the big takeaway I took from that whole experience was I was told, if I'm going to come back here, that life was going to be about love and tolerance and helping mankind. And that's what we're all supposed to be doing. And that the other emotions, negativity, resentment, fear, anger, hatred, are not necessarily of that realm. They're of a different one. And all the other emotions, are not. And we're human. We're meant to experience both. We came here with that in mind. But I think it's a beautiful thing that that you also have that principle, and you started out with that a few minutes ago about love. So fast forwarding to today and what you do, you've got all these different roles that you do. You're helping families, you're helping younger adults with your mentoring and also a big help at USARA and staying super busy in the recovery community. And really just, you're putting that out there. You're helping where you can. You're loving people where you can, loving people where they are, which is probably even more important. And when you do have setbacks or failures, what are some of the things, how do you handle those now with having the different mindset you have?
So, yeah, anytime I have like a setback, or instead of saying failure, remember me with my little language, I say
Yeah.
lesson, right?
Yep.
I see what I do right, the strengths. There's always something that you do right. And it's very hard for us to lean in or recognize our strengths in something that maybe when we flip flop or fall flat on our face. There's been many,
Right.
many times, and I'll say this out loud just so in case anyone's hearing, on my journey and recovery or just life, because my recovery journey is just life, right?
Right. We're the same. Yeah.
Not different, right? So even if normies, right, or people that have addiction or whatever listening to this, they can relate too, because we all have flip flops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's that where was I going with this? That focusing on the strengths. It's normal to have lessons and to feel like a failure. You can feel like a failure. There's been many times that I have, and picking up what strengths you have in that lesson, and then holding on again. I'm going to say the holding on again, holding on,
Yeah.
and leaning into that strength. So for an example, if I like have this, idea, I can't think of an exact example, but this is, let's say I had a business idea or whatever, and I went and indulged all this time, resources, and all this stuff, and it didn't work out, right? And I want to cry, which crying's okay. I cry and I'm
Yep.
yelling and screaming and I'm feeling like I'm a failure and all that. What did I do right? In that thing? Because there's always there's always things that you
Yeah.
did do right. That means I showed up. I actually have, I'm very committed,
Yeah. You took the risk, right?
took
Yeah.
risk. I was brave, right? Even
Right.
though something might fail and you might feel like a failure or whatever it is. And this can be even hard conversations. I can pick that, with my kids. Oh,
Yeah.
that didn't go good, or I handled that not well, right?
Relatable. Yeah. Saw
Um,
that going different.
sometimes I yell, not proud of it, and that's something I haven't worked through. I'm Italian. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And so sometimes I react in a certain way and I'm like, oh, that's not good. And so that does leave me as a failure as a mom. And then I'm like, what did I do right? Well, at least I had the dang conversation, and then
Yeah.
it gives me an opportunity to apologize. So yes, picking up on the strengths when lessons go array, or you are not happy with yourself, find what's going right for you during that time,
Yeah.
and holding.
That's awesome. That's a new one too. You got all kinds of new ones I haven't heard. A lot of times I'll do the shows and there's some synchronicities between like show to show and what people say as far as advice. And that's also a new one. And I love that because no matter how bad it is, you really can do that. And that's where you have to drive strength and hope from, right? You know that I'm a big believer in like positive thinking, law of attraction. And again, I'm also human. I sometimes scream too. I sometimes mess up too. I have conversations that go horribly bad when I thought it was going to go a different way. Whether it's with the kids, my partner, friends, whatever. Businesses fail or businesses succeed, or clients do what our clients do. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But I think what we really do is we don't only have to, but we get to look at those things, right? And if we can find the silver lining, which is I say that in the description of the show, that's all about finding the silver lining in these hard moments. And sometimes that silver lining is, what did I do right? Even though I failed miserably here, what did I do right? And it's really not about why is life doing this to me? It is like, why is life doing this for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because every tragic moment I've had in my life and every hard thing to overcome that has ever became overcome, I could look back clearly and see that moment of despair and go, well, this is why that happened. And I think the older you get, you can kind of shorten this gap a little bit, but it's hard to do. So
Me too.
yeah, I mean, so when you take on a new client, let's say with your coaching, and you're helping them overcome things, whether it's their addiction or other stuff, how do you inspire that person who's new to this entire way of thinking, right? Maybe they've never thought this way. They've grown up on the streets. I know we both have a good friend you work with that has one of the most insane stories I've ever heard. But when you're sitting down with somebody like that for the first time, what do you say to inspire somebody to create some lasting change in their life?
Yeah. I would say it's not really through saying something. It's really where I'm at, emotionally and mentally for that person. So, speaking of our friend or just anyone else, meeting
Yeah.
somebody where they're at, sitting with them and just sitting and meeting somebody where they're at builds that trust. And that doesn't, that could be somebody that's coming off of the streets. That
Yeah.
could be a high business. I'm working with someone that's a, high businessman that's never done any, addiction or anything like that. But just meeting them where they're at, sitting there talking, being curious is another thing. So not having an expectation that where I'm trying to make somebody move to this from A to B. I just sit
Right.
in A with them and be curious what A looks like. And so help them feel heard and seen. Right.
Yeah.
And then once they feel heard and seen by me, then they start trusting me to see me, how I'm living my life, and maybe some things that I've said, just like on this show, hold on,
Right.
whatever it is. And then that inspires them. Then that's where the magic happens, because then they trust me to come in and ask them some questions about their future. I really great at helping someone vision their future, similar to what Lucette did with me, and I walk them through this journey and what it looks like. And then another one of my strengths and my passion, my ultimate passion, is to work with somebody and find their strengths within themselves, help them see it, and then have them build up. And even if they like outgrow me, that's what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Of
want
course. Yeah.
leaders, like,
Yeah.
how beautiful is that? And then they go and help more people. So I wouldn't say it's an actual thing that I say that's inspirational. It's more my actions, because of the trust and meetings. I don't sit down with someone going, oh, your life's really shitty this way. And even though,
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah. Trust me, we point out our bad parts of our life enough to ourselves.
you know what I mean? Like if someone's unsheltered and like, I'm not going to go get a job, I'm just going to sit what it looks like to them first and love them for that. Again, core value, loving.
Yeah, and you talked a lot about vision several times in the show. I probably don't even have to ask this, but I think it'd be good for people to hear it. What role do you think vision plays, visualizing our success and what we want out of life? Do you feel like that's the way that you do get to success? For me, I feel like it's a critical component. You can't do it any other way.
No.
I think I've tried every other way, honestly. I'm 45. I started my first business at 18, and I've had a lot of things fail and a lot of things have success. But I can clearly remember the times where I visualized how I wanted something to go, and I bought into that dream so big. Sometimes that was because I was so down and out that I had no other choice but to decide to go up and believe in something completely unrealistic, and then it comes true. Do you think the same way on that it's a visualization thing? And, much like sports, athletes do it now, right? Visualize their games and winning and things like that. And it seems to work. Does that also work in your own?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I'm totally 100% in agreement with you, Chris. So just picture this, and I want our listeners to picture this. If you, I say we, like I'm part of the show now.
You're definitely part of it. Anyone who comes on here is definitely part of it now. I was thinking at the end of the year, we're going to have like a big event and like get everyone together and meet each other and, maybe talk about how to end world hunger or something. We'll figure it out.
Okay. So, but if we have a human being or human brain, right, that is going to walk through life, gets up, turns off the alarm clock, only thinks about turning off the alarm clock, no gratitude, nothing. And I'm not even talking about like God side. I'm just like turning off the alarm clock, getting in the shower, only thinking about getting in the shower, then going to work, right? And only doing what work, and then coming home and cooking their food. That's all they're thinking. All the next day. You're going to stay in what you're just thinking about. Now, if you want a vision, or let's take out the word vision because that sometimes scares people. If you want a different life, a better life, or a different life, then that is where the visionary or visions need to come in, and dreaming big. Simply, and it is like, so taking different parts of your day, even though we all turn off the alarm clock, get up, get in the shower, go to work, But if we can take different parts of our day and start expanding our human brain into thinking something else that's involved in our day-to-day practice, that's when things move differently, and we attract and we attract stuff, and then we also, our eyes become, our vision starts opening up to where we can see opportunities.
Correct. Yeah.
So yes, you cannot just turn off the alarm clock, go to work, eat dinner, and think that your life's going to change.
And get a different life. You can't. You have to visualize it. And, that's definitely a skill set I had to learn, and it's taken a long time. I mean, part of what I do when I'm active in the gym or, on the elliptical, is I try to close my eyes and like visualize walking through my life the way that I would love to have it. And I've had to break down a lot of beliefs to be able to do that. I want anyone listening to know that I did not wake up as a positive thought leader and wake up doing gratitude lists in the morning and, thinking about how grateful I could be for everything and everyone around me. That took so much work because as an addict, my mind naturally wants to be pessimistic and negative.
Mm.
But this stuff works. I haven't had a person on the show or a person I've met in my life that has success. I don't mean monetary, I mean success, which is more important. Sometimes monetary comes with that, but I haven't met a person like that at some point didn't have to visualize. And my theory on these things, Tiffany, now that I'm more spiritual, is that any thought placed in my mind is a thought inspired by something outside of myself. I don't believe it's just a bunch of neurons bouncing off each other and going, hey, let's give them this idea. I think there's divine thoughts coming through, whether you want to call it the universe, energy, God, whatever. And then a lot of us have this second voice in our head where we just decide we're going to tune it out. Like, oh, that's unrealistic. When I was in the sandbox as a kid, I was sitting there talking about driving a Lamborghini and a Ferrari. Those were that was cool to me. And I was only 6, 7 years old. I didn't know what they cost. I didn't know what the gas mileage was. I didn't know if they were attainable or not. I didn't know what type of person I'd be look at if I owned one of those. But that's how I thought as a kid. And then we go through life and this dream space we have is almost like a tennis racket screen. And we start having these dreams and they bounce against this screen.
Mm.
Those holes are not big enough and you're not open-minded enough. They're going to reflect back and you're not going to believe you can have it. And then guess what? Life shows up in a way where you don't have it.
Yep. Yep.
Whereas when you start dreaming and working out that muscle in our mind that is naturally given to us, you're right. Opportunities show up, right? People show up, situations show up, you get that phone call, and it's not luck. People don't become successful on luck. They become successful on hard work mixed with vision and mixed with action, right? You have to take the action for anyone listening,
and self-love.
Cool. And self-love is huge for anybody.
Yeah. If I had if people are new to this or want a little tool, and I use this with I used it with my own life, is when I first started becoming a way to vision was actually just a coping skill of trying to get to sleep, because when you first get in recovery too, you have all these night terrors and all this stuff,
nightmares and sleeplessness, right? And
I started starting out my future life by laying there, and I remember laying there for hours, and I'd have my house designed, I would have what my career looked like, I would walk myself with my eyes closed like it was a movie. And I still do that if I have a hard time falling asleep. I don't really anymore, but that's something I'll do. But I've done that with people that I've coached too. Okay, so tonight I want you to, what is one area in your life you want to work on? Sit down, lay in bed and walk it through. And you actually start thinking a different way. And then, who knows what happens in your dream state. And then you wake up and you feel a little better and you're like, wow, I can do this. And then it goes again. And then things start appearing, start. If you don't know where to start there when you're laying in bed and simply, it's a meditation.
Absolutely.
On your own.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to use something that you brought to the table here, which is this hold on theory. I've worked with a lot of people, whether it's coaching or just mentoring or whatever else. And after some time of trying to do this stuff, it can be frustrating because things aren't appearing right now. There's a buffer in time we have here on this planet, and that's appropriate because if I'm going to imagine living this certain life or having a certain thing or a certain person in my life, if they just popped up in front of me, we probably have a completely different world and it'd be a little bit messy here. So there's a buffer in time, but what you have to do is you have to do it long enough and consistent enough. And for me, I had to realize that meant I was unprogramming myself from a lot of unhealthy ways of thinking that were even given to me from my parents or other siblings or people around me or the church I was in or whatever else. And they develop these belief systems that we never challenged. Take Tiffany's advice. And then if it's not working for you right off the bat, realize you need to hold on and keep doing it till it does.
Mm-hmm.
And it will. Mm-hmm. And that type of faith doesn't come overnight. It comes with practice like anything else. I wanted to ask you a couple closing.
Yeah, go ahead. And then when something does happen and it surprises you, say thank you. Do not forget
to recognize it. Yeah.
Recognize and say thank you to whatever it is. Thank you to the person, just to the experience. Thank you to God. I don't care, but be in gratitude of that. Not how did this happen? What's going on? Why is this? A lot of people are like, well, there must be self-sabotage or this must not be true or da-da-da. Just sit in the moment and say thank you.
Right. Recognize it. I know everybody who's listening has probably heard to some extent of a vision board, right? So years ago on this note that you are talking about, and I don't know if I heard it somewhere, if it's something that just popped in my head, but I thought, I was looking at my vision board one day and it was just cluttered with all these things because I'll just post stuff up or I'll put different words on there. A lot of the pictures I put on there are very visual guys. So a lot of the pictures I put on there represent something or represent ways I want to live or places I want to be in my life or in my own heart and mind. But I remember looking at one day and it was just so freaking messy. And I noticed a bunch of these things on my vision board I had already achieved. Like some of the vehicles on there, having my daughter, there's certain things that I already achieved. And I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it a step further than just being grateful for those things and keeping them up there. I decided to create something called an achieved board. And I have one right here in my office in front of me. I've got my vision board and then an achieved board below. And what I do is I take the things that have been achieved, which I don't believe I achieve them anymore. I believe it's definitely help from an outside influence, but I move them down to that achieved board. And what it does for the subconscious mind is now I have an achieved board that's full as well as a vision board. And I've taught my subconscious that the things that go on that vision board can actually become reality.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some that have been on there for 5 or 10 years still. I just achieved some things recently that had been on my vision board for 7, 8 years. And so again, that concept of hold on, recognize, and be grateful for the things you're given. And you know what? For some people listening, you might be grateful just for the fact you have a toothbrush or 2 legs at work. Those are things to be grateful for, and then you can
Those are
build
great
into
things to be
others.
grateful for.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to have some fancy imaginary life that you have in your head to be grateful for it. So if you could go back, Tiffany, in time to this younger version of yourself we spoke about in the beginning, what advice would you give your younger self, knowing all this stuff you know now, knowing where you're at in life now? What would you tell that person?
That you're enough. You are enough. And I would hug myself so tightly and learn how to soothe myself, right?
Right.
Talking nicely to myself, hugging myself, and really just enjoing the ride and telling myself I'm enough. Yeah. So my
I love that.
curly hair, I had big curly hair. My nickname was Little Lulu, you know.
Yeah.
Something that's
I think
to tell you.
that's a hard one. Learning self-love is when you don't have that, that is a very difficult cycle to break. So I want to recognize that you've done that. And I love that that was your advice for your younger self, because if we could all get that a little bit sooner in life, and it's not about ego and arrogance and cockiness or any of that type of stuff. It's really about, seeing yourself as an imperfect human that you can love, because until you can do that, you're not going to be able to love outward, and you might be able to do it with some masks on, but it's just not sustainable.
It's not.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, Tiffany, last question as we come up on the end here. What would you like your legacy to look like?
I love that. Remember our friend Marcus? Rest in peace, Marcus.
I do remember Marcus. Yeah.
He would talk about the legacy, and he would often ask me that. What do you want your legacy? It would be, that I just loved people for who they were. I'm a big advocate for letting people be who they are and showing up for there, and that's good enough, not fitting
Yeah.
people into a box. And so when I pass, I hope that people get emotional, show up and talk kindly about me and the work that I did about loving people and not making people be a certain way to get my love. So,
Yeah. I love that. Loving without expectations. It's a rare gift to have. And clearly you have that, and it already does show to the people around you. I promise you that. Even watching you from afar the past few years, whether on social media or things you're doing, you can tell in the people's faces that you're around that they feel that from you.
thank
But that's radiating. So you're doing something right there.
you.
Well, and lastly, thank you all for listening to the end. I told you the best stuff comes up at the end. It works that way every time. If somebody wants to maybe join one of your workshops, or they want to find out more about what you're doing in your coaching or work with you on developing a vision, what's the best way for people to reach out to you to do that?
Yeah, I have a website called Thrive. So THRIVE with Tiff.com. I have a workshop that's coming up April 26th. It's called A Journey Through Senses. I'm going to walk you through how to stay grounded through using our 5 senses. And I have different workshops throughout, the year. I do vision board workshops.
Yep.
I host a fire walk. If you ever want to walk on fire, right? That's fun. Chris.
Who doesn't? You got to do that at least once.
Different workshops. But yes, you can go to my website, and you can also schedule a free consultation with me. Just a half hour, sit down, have a conversation, kind of like we did, Chris, today,
Right.
and seeing if it's a good fit for me to work with you and help you make your heart sing. I really am just here. I want to help you recognize how to make your heart sing through life. And you don't have to have an addiction to work with me. In fact, a lot of people that hire me are for different things. That's why it's called real life mentoring. It could be,
Right.
Learn how to communicate and have hard conversations, just to support, to bounce ideas off of each other.
Yeah.
It all works like that, because We have one
which is,
inside of us. We all do.
yeah, yeah, and that's an important thing to mention. I hope everyone heard that. That it, having a life coach, having somebody help you like that, it's not about money and success. I've had with and I've had without, and I can promise you, there's been many times when I had plenty of money and I was more unhappy than I'd ever been. Right. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way, but it balanced out here in the end. And I'm grateful for that. So, well, Tiffany, again, thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable. I'm sharing a little bit of your soul with everybody and a little bit of the advice that you have. I mean, clearly to make it out of homelessness and the despair you were in, and even these car accidents and things you've been in, to be where you're at today, it's truly impressive. And I hope that somebody who watches and hears this, um, is able to look at that and maybe just get a little bit of hope that they could do something similar. And I think that would be a great life to live. So thank you so much for coming on, and
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, namaste.
Namaste. Well, that's it for today's episode of Let's Do More. I hope you found inspiration, hope, and some powerful takeaways to help you on your own journey of growth and resilience. Remember, no matter what you're facing, you have the strength to overcome it and the power to create positive change in your life and community. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, download, and review the podcast. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories. And don't forget to follow us on social media and stay connected and be part of the Let's Do More community. You can find us on Facebook at Let's Do More Podcast, Instagram and TikTok at Let's Do More.life, X at Let's Do More Life, and our primary channel is on YouTube at Let's Do More. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, share your stories, or let us know what topics you would like to hear about next. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, remember, let's keep pushing forward, inspiring each other, and doing more for ourselves and the world around us. Take care, and I'll see you on the next show.